Hey everyone, this is Brad Hubbard. I'm so excited today. I have a very special guest today. The woman behind Ask for Liz on your favorite social media site, Liz Evangelatos. Liz, welcome. Thank you for being a part of this here today and for taking the time out to talk to me.
Hey, Brad, thank you very much for having me.
Sure, great. Well, what I like to do, I'm always on the lookout for folks out there who can help home builders become better builders. And you and I just recently connected on Twitter, of all places. And I say that all places because I'm still kind of a newbie on the Twitter side, trying to do my best to do some content. But ever since we connected, I love following you, love following your tweets. You always seem to be on there, which is completely awesome. And even though we're kind of on opposite ends of the country here too, so I learned a little bit about you on your website, but I thought it might be good for those who've not yet been introduced to you, for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, your kind of background, how you got to where you are today, and I'll just let you take it from there.
Okay. Well, let's see. I don't want to go too far back, but I once upon a time was a real estate agent. And after a couple of years, I became a real estate broker and then started my own shop. And, of course, there's a lot of marketing to be done when you're in real estate.
I tried my hand at it too.
Yeah, well,
it's a tough job.
It is. It's every day, every week. You have to have something going out. So I guess I was about 7 or 8 months pregnant with my third child when I decided to take time off from real estate. And I had an old client, or a past client. He wasn't very old. He was a computer consultant. And he knocks on my door one day and he says, "Liz, I heard you're just sitting around eating bonbons and watching soap operas, and I need help." And I'm like, "What?" I live in a small town, so I really don't know how he found out I was sitting at home. But he had apparently gotten too many computer contracts and didn't know how to fulfill them between him and his wife. So, and this was when telecommuting was really unusual. So I thought, well, it sounds interesting, and really I don't have anything to do for the next couple of months. So he said, "I want you to do a front page for Wells Fargo." And I thought it was just going to be graphical and it was going to be just fine. And he told me all the details, what it needed to have. It needs to have a field for a password and whatever. And then he's running out the door and he says, "And by the way, you need to learn HTML and I need it done by Tuesday."
Yeah, a piece of cake. Very nice.
So then I got very much into web design, and for about 10 years, because I was making just as much money in my living room doing web design as I had been in real estate.
Is that right? Now, do you still do HTML, or the only thing I know in terms of doing websites are things like WordPress. I mean, that's as fancy as I get.
Well, it used to be that you had to write every piece of code for that's back in the days. This was like the early 2000s, late 90s. So I did all of that. And then when WordPress came on the scene, it actually took me like a year to learn because it was very foreign to me. But I do small sites now, just small sites for small businesses. Sure. I don't do the large database-driven, huge ones that I used to do. So then I got a government job, which since my background was web design, they had me do that. But that is where they sent me to classes to learn about hashtags, because I do the social media for emergencies. Like I'm in Northern California, we have a lot of fires and floods and things like that.
Now, I imagine you have to, that's probably pretty structured in emergency management. I mean, you can't be out there just being goofy on.
Yeah.
So
I cannot be goofy.
Yeah. And not to say that you are goofy. I'm just saying,
I am. It's very
fun on Twitter, and that'd be one I think would be tough to have.
Yeah. Fun. You would not recognize me on the emergency side, but having to get tens of thousands of people are watching you, so you have to guide them to safety, during these emergencies, and you have to respond very quickly to what's happening, and I'm the only person doing that for the community.
So it wasn't just a one-way push. You had to respond even in an emergency.
Right. Like, is this road closed? Does that mean that road is closed? So after I still have that contract, and it's very, always learning new things. It's always very interesting. But I realized hashtags are very, very powerful. If you can make thousands of people take action on one hashtag because they're all watching that, with a few tweaks, you can do it for businesses too.
Hmm.
And so that is where my whole push for using the right hashtags comes from. And there are a lot of free tools, apps, whatever. Here's your best hashtag. They're not the best hashtags. It's an automated system that just gave you some hashtags that are very, very popular, but being very, very popular has nothing really to do with the kind of client you want coming to find you.
Okay, so
That was a very long story, but anyway,
so,
I got there.
so even for the hashtags themselves, then too. I mean, you don't necessarily. You always think, well, the celebrities, they can certainly get it trending pretty quickly, but you don't. You're saying you don't necessarily need to have that big of a following to use hashtags
No,
effectively.
it's absolutely not that way at all. It is understanding what your client, the person that you would, and maybe it's not the clients that you have, but the clients that you want. You have to kind of get into their head and say, like, if I were that person, what would I use to find a person like me?
Hmm.
But it comes pretty easy for me. But if you have some clients that or people that you'd like to have as clients and study how they use social media, it'll be pretty easy for you to figure out what hashtags would attract them. And that's not doing it in a sneaky way or it's finding common ground with their hashtags and yours.
Sure. So now, is there the ability for them to search by hashtag? I mean, is that traditionally how they typically do that, and that's what you're going for as a business?
Right. On my Instagram account, I get, which is really the easiest way to that I find to track how good or not so good my hashtags work. I usually get 50 to 60% of the people finding me that like my posts aren't even following me. They're following the hashtag.
Wow. Now, I was not aware of that. As I jump on there, and again, being a very new, I guess, I still consider myself new on Twitter. If I go to search, I don't necessarily put in a hashtag, and maybe that's not what you have to do. I just will look up something I want to know and, start with just a regular search. And I guess sometimes the hashtag does come up as I think about that. So, and it's maybe it gets me to latch onto that at that point.
Well, and that's true. You would use hashtags in that sense to find someone more on Instagram because it's a more difficult platform. But I remember when the Olympics, I think they were in Russia that year, and I just happened to come across that hashtag, so I started following it. And it was really, really hilarious. I had so much fun during the Olympics, not because of the stuff I usually like to watch on TV, but the experiences of people going to a foreign country and what they found and their pictures and a lot of it was journalists talking to each other, and it was just terribly funny. So if you have a favorite hashtag and you follow it, you can meet a lot of other people who also think that stuff is funny, or whatever it is that interests you, and you start interacting with them. So you're not always thinking about Twitter as a business tool, but as a tool to just get to know people. They get comfortable with you, and then you can build some kind of business relationship. I get about 90% of my business from Twitter, and most of those people never contacted me on Twitter. It's that they're watching me interact with other people, and they say, "Oh, she's goofy in probably a safe way. I can reach out to her."
Yeah, a lot of fun. Yeah.
So then they end up emailing me or whatever. So you're doing a great job actually, because you are reaching out a lot and you're talking to people, which is a lot different than Twitter was a few years ago, when people it was more of a billboard site. Today we see that as spam. Back then it was new and we would just put out the same stuff over and over again. But the real connection is well, I use Hootsuite, and I do put that. You said I'm always in your feed. I use Hootsuite, and I do Evergreen tweets, just stuff that I think people that are new might find interesting or helpful.
And when you say Evergreen tweets, again, new guy, what do you mean by Evergreen tweets?
I mean, it's always going to be true. If it's July or if it's December, it's always going to be true. So, and it's also kind of neutral. So if my tweet goes out today and something on the other side of the world or in our part of the world went wrong and it made the news, my tweet is not going to be offensive. It's just going to be neutral.
I see.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. I just wasn't, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to say I do. You always seem to be on there. I thought, boy, how can it be? And even first thing in the morning, for me, I'm usually up 5:36 in the morning, and you're on there, and I was like, well, wait a minute, you should be sleeping. So I knew there was something behind that.
Oh my goodness! Now everybody knows my secrets.
Yeah, that's how it works. Now, do you when you use that? I mean, how do you typically? Is there ones that are always kind of going out every once in a while, or do you sit down once a week to do this, once a day to do this? And again, you don't have to give all your secrets, but I just have a general idea of how to do that.
Well, I usually try to do like a month's worth at one time, and I will take some that get the most response and then put them into the next month and then add some new stuff. So the truth is, a tweet, if it's just going through your feed, only lasts for about 20-25 minutes. And so if you're on at 6 and I tweet you something, I could probably tweet the same thing at 4 because you probably won't be on and you're not going to see it again.
Sure.
But I usually, I try to avoid that, and my repeats will be monthly rather than, generally speaking, than, more frequent. But what that allows me to do is if I have 6 or 7 scheduled tweets that are just kind of generic and they're aimed at people who need to learn Twitter or just getting started, then if they respond to that, I have it on all the time. I mean, I'm not actually typing in all the time, but I'm looking for people asking questions. And then I answer those questions, but then it also, because I have all of that stuff scheduled, even if I never came back to Twitter the whole month, I'd still have stuff going on. Then it allows me to go find people. Did they recently interact with me? I'll go back and see what's going on with them. Do they have a similar interest? I'll go talk to them. I go through the home feed, but mostly I will go through lists. And I have people in different lists depending on, I'm a gardener. I actually have one just like when I feel like finding out what I should plant. I'm going to go in and talk to those people. I have one that looks like people that need help with Twitter. I'll go through and see if they have other questions, and maybe they're doing something that I think they could do better. I'll send them a DM, a direct message, and say, I noticed this, but if you know what I mean, just start a conversation. I have people who are social media experts, and I go out there to learn, like, what is happening right now. I don't know, I have countless lists. I'll go through, I'll hit the list, and what happens is my feed now is nothing but the tweets from those people. Yeah.
That makes it really easy to find and interact with. That's fantastic. Now, I want to talk, because you've been giving us a lot of great advice here too, but I know you do more than just tweet for a living. I mean, obviously, you've talked about doing some sites and some things on that, but I know you have, from looking at your site, you have 2 different classes. One, I think your primary audience are real estate agents. Obviously, you have the history in that, and you have your Instagram for realtors. But you also have a mastering hashtags course. Can you just tell us a little bit about either one of those? Maybe the mastering hashtags course. I mean, you obviously have a lot of experience in it. You know what you're doing on that end too. But kind of walk us through what that looks like for anybody who want to take that course as well.
Well, obviously, I already told you like why hashtags are really important to me. But I feel like most people don't understand the power that they have in business. Well, any way you use it, but if you use it correctly, you can find people, or have them, even better, they can find you. You can take the whole course if you sat down and just spent half a day. You could go through the whole thing. But if you're not familiar with hashtags, I would say do a half hour or so every day for a week or whenever. It's the information in it is, to this point, evergreen. It's like it always works the same way. A lot of it has to do with Instagram, because it's really hard to have anybody find you without hashtags on Instagram, but also on Twitter. And, you can use them on Facebook, although they're not that popular yet, I think, not in the same way as other platforms. Pinterest uses them. A hashtag is basically a super-powered Google search in a simple word. And so I have the first chapter just kind of as an overview of how to use them, and some background and some examples. But then I get into, like, do you want to create a hashtag for your brand, and why you don't want to have that necessarily, or you really shouldn't have it reflect your broker. Because if I'm at Remax today, I might get mad and go to Coldwell Banker tomorrow. And if I'm building my hashtag, for recognition for my business, it should be about me and what I do.
Sure.
So there's that chapter. There's also one of the most neglected areas, I think, for most real estate agents and probably builders too, is using hashtag at a conference, because you don't even have to be at the conference and get a lot out of it and meet a lot of new people.
Yeah, I've seen some of those just recently, and I don't even know what conference it was, but I saw a whole bunch of the same thing in my feed. And I think it was something on the software side, but it was something I didn't know what it was, but I knew a lot of people were talking about it. So I guess it needs to be at one where you have enough people that know what they're doing to put that into.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because real estate agents are not asking the question like, what is the hashtag when they sign up for going to that conference? Like, what is the hashtag you guys are using? If it's not being given, if it's not being asked for, I don't know. But there's a lot of loss there on both sides.
Oh, nice.
So you can go to it, and before you go to it, you can say, I'm going to it. And then you can find somebody else who says, hey, I'm going to it too. You don't know each other. You're in different states. You're different wherever. And now you have someone to meet up with when you get there and do business with down the road. When you're there, you take pictures. It's good for your clientele to know that you're going to these things and getting educated. Anyway, take my course so you can learn it.
That sounds good. No, it sounds good. And it sounds like you can pick it up and take it off. And I am building the learning management system for the software company I work for, which is Mark Systems, part of ECI. So I have a lot of respect for anybody that has to teach a course, because no one realizes how much work really goes into it, because you have to really, I spent the first half today scripting for just one course I'm working on right now, and to go through and really think about how do you teach someone this. And I always say, if you want to learn something, teach it. So you go and it really takes a lot of in-depth thinking, and I write out my scripts completely on what I've been doing on my classes. And sometimes you're down here and you go, oh, wait a minute, I should have said something earlier. So it takes you back up around. And you have some people say, well, we can get this class done this week. It's quite an endeavor.
Really a good point. I had a hard time deciding where to start, at what level. If someone, because I feel like, am I insulting someone if I start too low? So I bounce things off of my husband if he understands it, because he's not a social media guy.
Gotcha.
So anyway, he always says, you're talking over my head. Bring it down, bring it down. So the first chapter really kind of lays the groundwork, and then I have 5 other chapters that you can use as a reference if you are in certain situations. And if you go to the site, it breaks it out. I have a screenshot of all the chapters and what's covered in each one. And
Nice.
Part of it is video, part of it is the workbook. I have a fillable PDF. You can make your notes, and I show you how to create the best hashtags for your stuff and how to save them, how to copy and paste them, make it easier, when you're when you're in a hurry. And there's a place online called tagboard.com, tagboard.com. And if you are unsure of how important hashtags are, find a hashtag that's interesting to you and put it into that site, and it will show you across all platforms where that hashtag is used. It's kind of an interesting
I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, good. Well, hopefully some of the stuff you cover in there too. Again, I was a home builder myself for over 23 years. I had a Twitter account for that home building company and abandoned it quickly. Part of it was, number one, just trying to fit something in there. 2 was, how do I generate content? How do you keep it fresh, I guess, and keep going on? A lot of ours was, hey, some lots are available, or, new model, and everything seemed very spammy. I know we mentioned this a little bit earlier, too. Do you have any suggestions or tips for how is there a balance of, how much is okay to be more salesy, for a lack of a better term, versus other content, and any suggestions on that?
Sure, and I think it depends on the flow of your work. It's a little bit different, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you're a builder, because you do have, I think, more ups and downs. Spring is probably there's going to be more groundbreaking. Winter, if it's raining, you have less things happening maybe. So, all your social media can follow that flow. So you can talk about maybe 50% of the time or 40% of the time about different projects. most of the time should be engaging with other builders, with real estate agents, with stagers, people that are associated with your industry.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can also do searches for people in your area, people who are likely to buy. And if the people that are likely to buy are not in your area, you do a search, location search for them, and you target them and you bring them into conversations. But you have some unique opportunities because you can bring video into it too. I used to have this problem when I used to sell houses. I used to like partnering with builders because I love the idea of this house is almost finished and now I get to pick out my own carpet. He's going to let me pick out my own appliances. I can pick out my own colors. I would take people into a house like that and think they'd have the same excitement, but a lot of people don't have the imagination to see it. They'd tell me silly things like, well, let him finish and then I'll come back and pick. Mm-hmm. No, you can't move the window later. It's too late.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing for a home builder, especially not only when you have a spec house or one that's under construction, but to start from dirt and to sell something that's not quite there, sell the dream of it too. So,
but if you have more than one home, now a spec house is different, but let's say you have a small subdivision, you can take photos of the groundbreaking and whatever, and then take pictures or video of the finished product. And then that will get people more excited. And let's see, like myself, I've been in this house for 20 years or so. If you showed me a home that had, what is it called in the shower? The rainforest?
Oh, the rain shower head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, I'd like that. And then you can tempt me with, well, look at this Viking stove or whatever it is that's in there, something that, again, depends on who you're targeting. But the things that your target audience would be interested in, and just talk about that. That's kind of an advertisement, but kind of not, because I would be interested in seeing that.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I tried to post one time. It was just fun. We had Kohler came out with a Bluetooth shower head, so we just got together a couple of our guys, a plumber. It was my cousin at the time, but he was always such a ham, and we had a display in our showroom. So we put this Bluetooth shower head in there. We had one of our handymen who was a guitar player, and he was sitting there, and so we acted like we were doing a lab session. We wanted to see if the Bluetooth shower head really made you sing better in the shower.
That sounds like it was a lot of fun.
That plumber guy, I think we did. I got friends in low places, and he sang really, really bad. I mean, as bad as he could. The funnier part was the interview afterwards. So, do you think it made you sing better? He's like, I think it did, yeah. Had a little bit of fun. I don't know many people saw it, but we had fun with it. So.
Well, that sounds like it would be a lot of fun. And from there, I mean, you just people will react to it, and then you engage them, and then you don't forget them. Put them in a list or go back to that, depending on how busy your feed is, and talk to them about things that interest them. And it goes back to also, this is important, your bio and Twitter and all these places is so important. So you can jump over to their bio and see what they're about, and then connect with them in that way. What is interesting to them, and start a conversation.
Nice. I never really thought to do that, and again, that's why I learned from the great ones like you here as well. Do you ever find that maybe either Twitter or Instagram is better for one or the other? Like a lot of times I think in my head, again, from just what I've used, that Twitter was pretty good for business to business, but obviously you're showing that it works for business to consumer easily. But is Instagram inherently better for home builders because it's more visual, or doesn't really matter?
No. I think it's personal preference, and a lot of people will probably send you angry notes because of what I'm about to say. I like Twitter so much better than Instagram. Instagram is great for the type of company, the type of brand that has a lot of new stuff all the time. I can send the same tweet out this month and next, but if I put the same picture out on Instagram, people are like, what? No. So for myself, my clients, when I have a client that has a lot of inventory, that is a heavy lister or is part of a team, I'm in heaven, because they're going to have so many photos of listings that I can use for their Instagram, because that's what people like. Beautiful houses, beautiful houses, beautiful houses. If I have someone who is a buyer's agent, my job is a lot more difficult, because if they don't send me photos of their actions, what do I put out there? So if you're a small builder and the whole thing is on any platform is consistency. I'm on every day because that's what I do, but other people should strive to be on at least 3 or 4 times a week and just be on there regularly. So if you are only building 3 spec houses a season, how much of, can you put on Instagram before people are fairly bored? Whereas the other reason I like Twitter also is because you can always be engaging and always be getting leads. And it's so easy to find leads by using the search mechanism in Twitter. Whereas it's a strain to find people. It's a lot of work to find people on Instagram. And if I tweet you, then 100,000 people just saw us. But if I have a really nice story laid out in Instagram and then someone responds to it, that message goes to my direct message and that person and I see it. And while that's great for like an intimate little talk about whatever we're talking about, it does not let all my followers see that I'm active and perhaps they had the same question. And now I can look like a genius in front of a lot of people.
Well, I don't think that's too hard for you to do. You are true Twitter geniuses as far as I'm concerned. Because I've learned so much even in the short time we've been connected too. And I think the thing I've always found it difficult, and I don't know how you can do this, is how to pull myself out of what I do every day. Again, built over 23 years, you go and you don't think much of what you do because that's just what you do. But how do you make it that it's fascinating to someone else? Like I could go and talk to someone that owns a guitar shop and say, wow, man, there's so many things, because I want to learn how to play the guitar. I'm terrible at it. I've been trying, but can think of all kinds of neat things I want to know where they don't think a thing about it, And is there any way that you suggest to kind of pull yourself out of there to look at it fresh?
It is a difficult thing to do. I suggest someone marry someone like my husband who tells them all the time that they're talking over their heads or talking in jargon. So don't use jargon. But if you are lucky enough to have a receptionist or secretary, someone who answers your phone, find out the most commonly asked questions from that person, the frontline person. And then for yourself, if you're selling homes and you're talking to homeowners, what do they usually want to know? Out of one subject, you could probably get 20 or 30 tweets because, you're limited in your 280 characters, whatever. But let's say I want to buy a house from you. How can I do that? Do I go to the bank? Are you going to help me with financing? Do I need to go to a real estate agent? Just put down like as many questions as you can and just answer them. And simple as, did you know that if you want to buy my house on da-da-da-da, I've already talked to Bank of America or Wells Fargo or local credit, whoever, to get you pre-qualified. Call me for details. Or did you know that I could help you with whatever you can help with? So just think about the questions that they've asked you about before. Whatever their objections might be to buying that house, just address them in a tweet so you've eased their mind, and they also see you as an authority because you know more than them about that subject. Yeah,
and it's so hard to I guess, remember that, I guess, is the best way to do that. And I would find myself even in calls with people, they call and say, hey, there's, something happened on the job site. Maybe a window got broke. I don't know. Something like that just happens during construction. I go, oh, okay. And after a while, I'd sense that they were getting a little uptight, that they didn't think I was taking it serious enough or something on that end. And I had to stop myself even those times. Hey, believe me, I'm taking this seriously. I deal with it every day. Sometimes I get numb to it. So again, it's even things like that say, hey, things happen. You just deal with them. You work on it. I know I'm going to take care of it. They don't necessarily know that. So it's very much those same type of things. I get what you're saying on that too. So yeah. And again, I know you do a lot of having fun with Twitter. I've been trying to do better at that too. And is there a point where does that line come? And I look at a Twitter account for Wendy's, for instance. Is there a point where you say, hey, are there certain topics you shouldn't broach? Are there certain how do you know? I guess politics. Is it something like the same thing in normal company that you should kind of stay away from?
It depends on the person, but I got to tell you, as a business person, your politics are none of my business, and my politics are none of your business, and I like money from both sides. Okay, I'll just put it like that. Yep. I don't care what side you're on. Sometimes it's dangerous even to be neutral. People get upset, and then they're not going to do business with you because of how you think or
Sure.
what you say, whatever. So I just eliminate that. And actually, when I first started using Twitter, I really used to promote, no matter what the other person is saying, just interact with them until you find some common ground. There's no reason for people to be angry, and you don't need to block them and do those things. But now when I get people that are like very, very extreme one side or the other, and it doesn't bother me which side they're extreme about, I will block them because I don't want that in my feed, because I'm having fun, but I'm also here to make a living. And likewise, other things that I won't do, I don't talk about in a business meeting. I don't talk about my religion or yours, your politics or mine. You know, you can have light fun without getting too deep. You can do that when you have a better, deeper relationship with someone, if you want to discuss those things. But on Twitter, I think I've went sideways from your question. I don't discuss those things, but Wendy's, they have a certain attitude and you expect it. So they're kind of taking a risk, but it's fun. There's another, I think I'm terrible with sports, but I think they're a baseball team on the East Coast, and they're fairly new. Yard Goats, Go Yard Goats is their Twitter handle. And that guy is funny. And he teases, and he's sharp-witted, and I could see where some people would take offense. But I don't even like baseball, and I used to go check in on it just to see what he would say.
Right.
And the thing is about his account, it grew very large, but to this day, I see that he responds almost to everybody. Wow. And that's the key. You have to respond to people, or you're not being social.
Sure.
And then there's
just spamming. It's a one-sided thing going out. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, great. I think I took up enough of your time. I want to thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate that you took time out of your busy schedule to talk to little old me here as well. And I want to remind everyone where you can find more information. Obviously, on your favorite social media site, you can look for Ask for Liz on Twitter for sure. I know that. And Instagram. I'm not much on Instagram. I think I have 3 pictures on there. And
I'll go look at them and say strange things.
Yeah, you would. You'll see one like my kids from years ago, and I think my only friends are people from Facebook. I don't know, something like that. You can also find Liz's mastering hashtags class at masteringhashtags.com. So make sure you check that out too. Follow Liz. I have someone I know I'm going to connect you with, a local realtor around here who I think is doing a good job with video. She's humorous. The first one I saw, I instantly connected. I think it was on LinkedIn is where I connected with her. She was she had a house that was for sale, and she was flossing in every single room of that house. Just you had a song going. She was flossing. She was in the master bathtub, going down out front, and you just waited for the next one to see where she was going to show up again. And
that sounds like fun.
Oh, it was. So as soon as I saw I had to connect with her, I said, I just have to connect with someone that has that much fun on it too. Got a couple others. So I'll make sure we get you two connected as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Hope you have a good rest of your afternoon. And thanks again.
Thank you, Brad. It was a lot of fun.